3, 4.
Hey father, hey son, making a podcast sure sounds fun. Set up the mics, grab a cup of joe, and let's see how it goes.
Welcome to We Were Thinking, and I'm Matt with Steve Coleman here, my dad, and today we've been thinking about how to have a lasting marriage. And off air before we started talking about this, at the time of recording, mom and dad are about to celebrate their 46th wedding anniversary. And then my wife, Jackie, and I just celebrated our 18th. So between the two of us sitting here at these microphones, there's 64 years worth of marriage. Obviously, Dad has far more than I do. But, we were just thinking, man, that is a very long time of marriage. And again, anytime you tune in and you listen to us, we are not experts in any way. My degree was in pastoral ministries with a minor in church music. Yours was in mass communications, and it's just we've lived some life, and just kind of sharing our experiences. And so today we just kind of wanted to talk about marriage and some of the questions. Do you really want a lasting marriage? Do you really want to have and leave a faithful legacy? I like this one that I'm looking at our notes here. Here's a question for you. Would you want to be married to you?
I was at a marriage retreat years and years ago, and that phrase came up. It says, guys, think about yourself. Think about who you really are, and it's specifically for the men. And it was like, guys, I want you to think for a second. You know your idiosyncrasies, your goofiness and everything. Think for a second. Would you really want to be married to you? And most of the guys thought for a second. Of course, there's always a couple of guys, well, yeah, I'm a catch.
Yeah.
And then everybody looked at him like, no, you're a moron.
Yeah, you just explained everything that we were trying to, the
Exactly.
point we were trying to make.
So the point was, would you really want to be married to you? Because when we started thinking about who we are and what we do and some of the silly things or the goofy things that we do, our spouse puts up with that. So it really comes down to thinking about, would I want to be married to me? And if not, what are some things I need to do to change? Not that I'm an awful person, but it does take two to make one. The Bible says that two become one flesh. So I've got to make sure that I maintain that. So if I wouldn't want to be married to me, then what are some things I need to do to change that and shift that in my own life? And I think that helps along the way. And the thing about, do you really want a lasting marriage? And I know the answer. I know everybody's going to say yes,
well, yeah.
Of course. But if you want a lasting marriage, it's going to be like anything else you've ever done. You've got to spend some time to work on it. And when I say that, I don't mean that you sit down with a notebook or something on your computer and go, okay, today's task is to focus on having a lasting marriage. I'm going to check off these 3 boxes. It's going to be good. That's not what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about a lasting marriage is, once again, as we always say, starting with the end in mind of what do I want to accomplish in my marriage? What do I want it to look like? Evaluate where I am now and what steps do I need to do to get there. I can tell you that when I asked for your mom's hand in marriage, so to speak, to your grandfather, and he just told me, he said, listen, you guys are going to argue. That's just the way it's going to be. And you've got to know that divorce is not an option. I want you to know that up front. He said, I'm not telling you how to live your life. I know you guys are going to go through some things, but divorce is not an option. Once that was taken off the table, then, all right, so the failure is taken off the table. Then how do I make it good? Mm-hmm. How do I make it last? Not perfect, but what can I do to have a lasting legacy? Well, there are certain steps that you need to do, and there's certain things that we got to keep before us when we do that kind of stuff.
And if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, you can go back and listen to. We actually did an entire episode on divorce is not an option and how important that is in mine and my wife's and you and mom. It's how important that phrase has been. I love in our hometown that I live in, there is a car show. And this is not a left turn, guys. Just stay with me. In our hometown, there's a car show the 4th Saturday of every month between April and October. So it happens, once a month. And I love walking around seeing these classic cars and seeing these guys. And they are sitting there and they are polishing and they are sitting beside it and they are sitting beside it for 6 to 8 hours just out there in the hot sun or in the freezing cold or in the rain or whatever. And they're just sitting there by their car, and they are so proud of this car. And the reason they're so proud of this car is because maybe it's been a project car. Maybe it has been, I found this. Let me show you pictures. And I found this out in the barn in Indiana, and I towed it home, and I bought it for this much, and I put this into it, and I've done this, and I've changed this, and I've added this, and I've restored it. I've done nothing but original parts, and they are sitting there so proud. And I have made the mistake. Look, I love cars. I love classic cars. For me, it's the 60s. I love the 60s muscle cars. My favorite is that boxy style, like Impala. 64 Impala is like up there. Or like the Super Dream would be like a 63 Lincoln Continental. Like just that long, straight lines, whatever. And I can remember there's been times I walk up and I'm like, has that got the 409 in it? Now listen, I know it's a 409 because it says on the side of the car 409. I don't even really know what that means, to be honest with you. But I know that 409 is bigger than a 376. And so I know it's got more power, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, dude, has that got the 409? He's like, oh, yeah. And then he starts giving me the specs on the engine. My eyes glaze over and I go, I like that you went with the powder blue. I don't know. But the whole point of it is that the reason they do this is because they love that car. And what they're doing on the weekend, what are they doing? On the weekend, they are out there working on it. You drive past that garage, and that garage is up, and there's this guy out there 7 o'clock in the morning. He is waxing. He is polishing. He's got his tools. He is working on that car. Why? Because he loves that car. If we love our marriage, it's going to take that kind of work. It's going to take that attention to detail, and you want to remember what you've been through to get to that point. They love telling the story of how they got the car, how they worked on it. We got to love how to tell the story of our marriage, because as you tell the story, it strengthens your story because you're remembering what you've been through to get to where you are. Now, you used to work in insurance, though, and you've had some odd experiences.
Listen, I had a story one time, and when I say I had a story, this is a true story to the degree that I'm sitting in a room. We're dealing with automobiles and this sort of thing, and I'm sitting in there, and I'm talking to this guy. He's across from the desk, and his wife is with him, and this guy is going off on me about his car. Obviously, it's an automobile accident. We're trying to make things right. And he's talking about the car just like you were talking about these guys, about all the work he had done, the color it was. And it wasn't even a classic car, but it was his baby. He told me the size of the engine, the kind of tires, the lift kit he had put into it, the stereo system, all this other stuff, and how beautiful this car was. And this car was his baby. The sun rose and the sun set in his car. I mean, this is a short illustration of what was said. He talked about this car for, I know, 10 to 12 minutes. And I'm sitting there just looking at him, trying to figure out how much money he has invested in this car, because it's a business transaction, because I'm thinking there's no way I'm ever going to satisfy this accident, what's going on. That wasn't the thing that got my attention. What got my attention was in this accident that someone had with him in his baby and in his car, his wife had been in the car with him. Well, she's sitting beside him. And she has her arm in a sling, she has black eye, she has a broken tooth, and bruises on her face. And not once in that 12-minute talk with me about how upset he was did he ever mention the injuries to his wife from this automobile accident.
I just can't fathom this.
He never said a word about her. But I know all about his baby, and it sure wasn't her. And not once in all that time did he ever mention anything about how we're going to pay for her doctor bills, her hospital bills, what's wrong with her, what are we going to do to rectify this? No, he wanted to know what I was going to do about his car. Now, I'm not a smart man. I don't even claim to be smart, but I can, I role play this in my mind. So I'm sitting here at a desk, and I'm on the other side of it. Someone's hit me. My car's mangled, but my wife is sitting here, and she's been injured pretty significantly. A tooth is broken, a black eye, some bruises all over. Her arm's in a sling, at least multiple fractures and everything. If I didn't mention, maybe most of the conversation that it was your mom that was hurt, there would have been some more injuries taking place at that desk. She would have taken that cast and knocked me out. I'm just saying that, is it important to you?
Right.
And I'm not sure. I don't know what happened in their marriage. I don't know the rest of that story and stuff. But I thought, man,
what has happened in your marriage to get to that point that your car is far more important than your wife?
yeah,
You know?
and it's interesting as you were talking about it about the guys and anyone who has a various hobby. We're just using cars as the metaphor today. But if you have a hobby and the things that you really like and you really love, you invest time in it. You spend time with it in that hobby. I like to do woodworking, but not at the detriment of not spending time with your mom, my wife, my bride now after 46 years. We spend time together. We go places. We do things, not at the detriment. My hobby, not at the detriment of spending time with her, but I see men and women that they end up spending all their time in their particular hobbies. He has his, she has hers. Mm-hmm. They're in the same house, so to speak, but they're not even in the same room because they're both doing their own thing. And then when the difficulties come, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
You mentioned a minute ago that talking about what did you do to get there? Sula and I, we will sit down sometimes and talk about a date that we went on to before we married. There was a restaurant, I can tell you, it was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was up in Lookout Mountain, halfway up the mountain. It was a Mexican restaurant we went to. It's been gone many, many years, but when we drive through and see the old building there, we immediately go back to the nights that we would go there, have a date, the meals we would have, the desserts we still talk about 47 years later. We weren't married at the time, and that became one of our favorite places. So we still talk about that and go to those and ride by and see that. Well, that's important to maintain and to continue to strengthen your marriage. I think that sometimes we need to reminisce. And if you think about it, Matt, your anniversary should be a time of celebration because you're reminiscing about the day you married. I tell my students, and I'll do this briefly as I can, when we share our story of our life, when we share the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, and I make no apologies about that at all, but you need to tell your story. And I said, I can tell you a story of a young man who's standing at the front of a church and the back of the doors open of the church. Everyone rises and in walks this beautiful young woman. She's on the arm of her dad, who's like a mountain man, and she comes walking in, and you can tell it's a very solemn moment. And they come in, and the groom, he's just bursting with excitement and the joy. They come up, and they go through all the ceremony. When they do their wedding ceremony, they decided not to turn their back on the audience. They kind of turned sideways so they could see the joy and the excitement on the bride and the groom's face. They went through all the vows, and at the end, they pronounced them husband and wife. When they left the church, they walked out a different song. It was a Christian song, and everybody's like, "Well, that's not your traditional way," but it's what they wanted. And they walked out, and the excitement that was in the room, and everybody applauded and was excited for them. You can't refute that story. You weren't there. I was. That was my wedding. And I remember it, and I can talk about it. Well, I think that sometimes we need to go back through and talk about that with our spouse, because if we're going to maintain and have a lasting legacy in our marriages, we got to work on that thing. And sometimes I know guys are like, well, that's pretty sappy to go back and remember all that kind of stuff. It wasn't sappy at the moment.
Well, and here's the deal. If you think it's sappy, guarantee your wife doesn't. And here's the point. Your marriage is not about you. Your marriage is about the both of you. And so we've got a couple of ideas about, tune-ups. All right. So we're going to keep this car metaphor going just because we started with it. Let's go.
That's right. We're going to run with
it. But one of the things is, like we said, it takes work. It takes maintenance. But the things that are worth it, if it's worth it to you, you'll do the work. Dad and I both like to use fountain pens, right? So we like to write with fountain pens and stuff like that. It's so much easier to go get a Bic stick pen that has been unchanged for 55 years or so and just write with it. But there's something about the experience of cleaning and refilling your fountain pen and using it to write in a certain way. And it's like, there's a cheaper way to do it. There's an easier way to do it. Yes, but there's something about the experience and the maintain, and it's worth maintaining and using. So your marriage is worth maintaining and working on. So we've got a couple of ideas, and we'll talk through some of these. So first one, we're talking about changing the oil in the car. And one of the things they're talking about is you may have to, this may mean you have to take the time to do something that your spouse likes, loves, and invest in them. I'll tell you who in our marriage does a great job of that. It ain't me. It is my wife. I love the Atlanta Braves baseball. Please don't turn us off if you're not a Braves fan. I'm just saying, that's my team. I've been a Braves fan since I was a little boy, followed them all my life, and I love watching the Braves on TV. I love listening to the Braves on the radio because that's kind of nostalgic for me because Dad taught me how to listen to baseball, and he would ask me questions. All right, what's going on and all that. And I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, I was sitting there watching a game at night, and the way our room is set up, I've got it on the TV, and we've got our two recliners sitting side by side, and she walks in with with her drink that she's drinking, and she sits down and she goes, "Oh, is that so and so batting?" And I said, no, that's so and so. She goes, "I don't think it is." And she was right, and I was not. The guy's name was not on the screen. She could just tell by the way he stood, which is. I just turned and looked at her and I said, "I have never been more proud of you than I am in this moment." And she knows the team and she whatever. And she doesn't care the first thing about baseball, but she loves me, and she knows how important it is to me, and she has learned it. We got her for Mother's Day this year. We got her a jersey of her favorite player, and she wears it all the time. And that's because she is invested in me, and because she knows how much I love it, and so she's doing that for me. I love history. When we went on our honeymoon, we went to Asheville, North Carolina, and went to the Biltmore Mansion. And we're like, all right, we're kids, and we're like, all right, we're gonna splurge. I'm gonna get the audio tour thing. Do you want one? She was like, no, not even a little bit. I was like, are you okay if I get one? She goes, yes, please. And we'd go through this, and you're going through 63 rooms in this house, and I want to know everything because I love history and I love trivia and all that stuff. So I have this thing, and we'd go into a room, she'd look around, and she'd go sit down. And I was like, I'm so sorry, I'm taking forever. She goes, I want you to take as much time as you want. And then I would come tell her some of the stuff that I'm learning. I'm like, you sure you don't want to listen to this? She goes, no, I love hearing how excited you are about it, and I want to hear you tell me. And so she is doing a wonderful job for me, but I find myself going, well, I don't like that show, or I don't want to do that, or whatever. And there have been times where I have to check myself and I say, hey, listen, son, that woman loves you, and it's moments like that where I have to stop. I have to go back and I have to say, you know what? What is something that she loves, and what is something that she wants to spend time in? So she loves children's ministry. She loves working with this. She does the vacation Bible school at our church. She's like, I want you to help me. Yes, ma'am. I am there. Whatever you want me to do, I'm there with you. I can't stand working with children's ministry for the most part, but I love my wife, and I watch her come alive, and I'm going to be part of this with her.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be even a big thing either. I'll tell you, just so everybody can understand, when we talk about you do something that your spouse loves, that it may not be what you like, it's not your thing, whatever. Your mom, we went on a holiday last year. It was our 45th anniversary, so we went on something very special. We're up in Pennsylvania, came across Virginia, just beautiful country and all this stuff. And we're going through this one place, and she sees a Goodwill store.
Okay, mom is I have never met anybody that can do a Goodwill store shopping spree like that woman.
My wife, she will come out. I come out with a book for 65 cents, and she comes out with, look, I got a wedding dress for $3. And I'm like, I don't know why we need that or whatever.
Name brand outfit I found for you for $7. You know, like
or there's a shirt from a local golf club that's a $45 shirt. She got it for $3. I thought you would like it. Type thing. She's that person.
Amazing.
But it's not my thing. Yeah. I don't like them. But she loves them. So when we go somewhere and if we see one, she says, "Oh, look, they've got a Goodwill store. Can we stop?" If we can work it out, we're going to stop. Now, here's how it works. She goes to the clothing. She knows what she's looking for. She starts going through all that stuff. I go to gadgets and junk and stuff.
Yep.
And after about 15 minutes, I'm finished. In 15 minutes, I think she's made about 4 feet in one rack.
I know.
But she's the person. She's the one that comes out with all that. Now, I say all that to say that when we're near a Goodwill store, I know what's going to take place. I know that she loves it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my thing. But she loves it, so we go in and usually say, "Oh, I got this for the grandchildren," or "I got this for so-and-so," or "Oh, look at this thing." And and it's like you're saying, it kind of makes your eyes light up because it's a good deal. She enjoys it. She likes it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But those are just some small details.
Well, and we've said it on here before, but something else that you've done, and I've seen you do it when I was a kid, when I was living in your home, and even now, her favorite time of the day. Dad will come in, and Mom loves sunset. Mm-hmm. That is absolutely her favorite. It's called the golden hour, and it is just to watch Mom's eyes light up. And Dad will come home, and he'll just be like, "Hey, let's go for a drive." She's like, "Well, let me finish dinner," or whatever. It's like, "Hey, we can put that on pause or whatever. Let's go for a drive." And you guys will go for the drive, and at some point in the drive, she'll just go, "This is my favorite time of day." 46 years of marriage, I think you know that.
I know that.
And it's not that you don't enjoy that time of day. You do too. But it's, what it's doing for her. Mm-hmm. And you take that moment to say, "You know what? I want to do this for you."
Oh, absolutely. And I think that we find those things and do them because we love our spouse. Now, here's the flip side of that. If I know she likes that, your wife likes certain things, to withhold that from her, to say, "I'm not going to do that," one, that's selfishness on your part. And selfishness, in my opinion, destroys more marriages than anything else. And I can talk more about that later, but I think that selfishness destroys marriages. But to know that she has a desire and it gives her joy, and for you to withhold that from her, that's not love. Right. That's abuse, so to speak, because she needs that in her life, and you're withholding that from her. And it's the same way the other way around. There's certain needs that I have as a male, you have as a man. And we're not talking about sexual. We're just talking about just needs, affirmation, spending time together,
respect,
quality time, respect, those characteristics. So to withhold those things from each other is not love. What that is that's really abuse in the marriage. So I think we have to really work on those things.
Yeah. And so we're going to turn this one into a two-parter because we've got 5 things we want to go through, and we've gotten through 1. So we're going to turn this one into a two-parter because we genuinely believe marriage is the first relationship God ordained in Scripture. He created it, and he believes in it. He uses it as his metaphor. I've said it before, where he used it in Genesis and he used it in Revelation. Marriage is the most important human relationship, and so that's why we want to spend all this time on it. But so we talked about changing the oil in the car, doing things that your spouse loves, and the second thing we're talking about is tune-ups, and you've kind of mentioned the anniversary thing, and doing the anniversary and how to tune that up. And one of the things is revisit your vows. Funny story, Dad actually did mine and Jackie's wedding, and we did our vows, and we did non-traditional vows. But we had all the stuff, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, but we wanted to do it kind of modern language. And the funniest thing was when we picked them, and Dad and we were all sitting there talking about it and everything. I don't know if you remember this, but we were kind of talking through it, and you're like, "You sure this is what you want to do?" "Yes, this is what we want to do. We've read it. We really like the language of how it is. You say it and we'll repeat." We didn't realize how long those vows were. They were so long. We didn't realize until we did it at our rehearsal, and we were like, it's like a minute and a half long per person. And we started laughing because we've gone back and watched our video, and you can watch Jackie start shifting her weight because her feet's going to sleep because the vows are so long. But anyway, you got to revisit the vows. And you got to work on and remember those things, maybe even renew them. Jackie and I renewed our vows after 10 years, and our 20th is coming up in 2 years, and we're probably going to do some kind of because we want to remember that. We want to recommit and I think one of the things that's so amazing, to be honest, our wedding video is so cringy because it's not us. Like, we've grown so much as people, and but we still watch it, and the kids have watched it, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, y'all were so young," and all this stuff. And here's something: I think you've got to get out the photo album. I think you got to get out the photo album. You've got to get out the video. You got whatever, and watch it and go over it with your children. Because I can remember sitting with you, because you had your one of your groomsmen pulled a practical joke on you because you'd pulled a practical joke on him and all this stuff, and just hearing you tell that story, and then just hearing you relive that day, and I'm asking you questions about it, and you get to relive that, and there's just something about that, taking the time to go back, to revisit, to remember, man, I thought I loved you then, But then to think after the 18, 15, 7, 25, 35 years, oh, how much more do we love each other now?
Oh yeah, and when it comes to going back over the vows and stuff, you made those vows before God and witnesses. We forget that sometimes. We say, "Well, yeah, we got married." No. It's a big deal, and anymore, I'm just thankful that when I got married some 46 years ago, it's not some of the weddings that I see today that are big productions. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not hammering that. I'm just thinking that I think that we've got to get back to focusing on what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the importance of it. I think that sometimes that we want to spend so much time on the production that we forget about producing a solid marriage in there,
right?
And the vows that we say to each other. But I think somewhere you go back and you relive those vows for richer, for poor, or those type phrases. Sickness is important because I've made a vow that I am not going to leave you as my bride. Many years ago, Sula, my wife, she was very ill, very sick, and she was really struggling, trying to figure out what was going on in life. It was just one of those things, and we've gone through this together. And one of the things that I did, I sat down beside her. She was in bed. She just didn't know what was going on. I sat down beside her, and I took her by the hand. I said, "I want you to look at me. I made a vow before God, in sickness and in health. I'm not going anywhere. Take that worry off the table." She said, "But what if I never get any better?" I said, "Then I'll still be with you. I am not going anywhere. You take that off the table. That's a worry you don't have to worry about. I will be here for you."
Yeah.
And we walked through that together. We still talk about it some 20 plus years later. It made our marriage stronger because fast forward several years ago, I had a health concern, and my wife, I knew right off the bat, she's not going anywhere because we've made a commitment to each other and to God that we're not going to be leaving each other just because one of us gets sick.
Yeah.
And to address what you said, when you first marry as a young person, you love that person with all that you have.
Right.
You just don't have much.
That's right. That's exactly right.
I mean, you think you do, but you don't. And after 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25, whatever, all of a sudden you realize how deep your love is for your spouse. And once you start getting into that depth of love that's in there, you look for ways to serve them. You look for ways to improve the marriage. You look for ways to spend time with them. And it doesn't have to be big things. Once I've said before, like picking flowers or whatever. But you look for ways to make sure that you're working on tuning up your marriage. And I think looking at the vows is one of those things. And then let's get realistic. We talk a lot about evaluating in a lot of other situations in ministries or in jobs or whatever, but we need to evaluate some things that are going on in our marriage. Are there some things that I'm doing or not doing that I need to do better?
Yeah.
After 46 years of marriage, coming up on it as we're recording this, there's little things that we're looking at. We go for walks a little bit more frequently than we used to. Our time has shifted a little bit in our life, this stage, so we go for a walk. Yes, it's healthy. Yes, we should be getting exercise and that kind of thing, but we're spending time together. True story, and I'll share this for everybody because I know we're going to get close to cutoff time here in a minute, but one of the things that we did just recently is we drove to a place that we hadn't been to in over a year, and they have done some remodeling, and it looked very nice. And we were taking a walk, and we're just far enough away from the car, and it starts to drizzle rain. Now we pull out the phone. We realize it's not going to rain long, so we're standing underneath the trees together, and the rain is coming down. We're standing side by side, and just holding hands in the rain on a trail. Nobody else is out there but us. For me, that was a very romantic moment between two old married people walking hand in hand in the rain, which is one of those old songs, walking hand in hand in the rain with the one I love. I mean, that's exactly what we were doing. But your mom talks about that even now, like, man, that was kind of sweet. That's something we haven't done in a long time. Well, what am I doing? I'm tuning up our marriage. Yeah. That wasn't my intent, but that was the result. And so I think that what we got to do is be intentional, look for those ways, and like I said before, of finding things that they like, and then go back and talk about what you're committed to. Yeah. I think that's where the wedding vows have got to come in. I think I go back through and look at the vows. I've done so many weddings and things, and I talk to the young couple. Let's look at these vows and what it is you're wanting to say and what you're committing to. These aren't just words to say to get through the ceremony. These are commitments, and don't say them if you're not going to be committed to it, because once again, it's a witness between God and these other witnesses. Seeing you make this commitment, it's got to be a commitment for the long haul.
Several years ago, there was something I was thinking of when you were talking about marriage. The marriage, and we've gotten to this point where it's a great celebration, and we get everybody, and it's a big production and a big to do. Again, if that's your thing, fine, whatever, that's great. But I remember. Do you remember back in the day they were called Jesus Speaks? They were billboards. They were just black and they had white, where it'd say stuff like, hey, you remember that love thy neighbor stuff? I meant that.
Yeah.
From God. And there was one that I remember seeing. It said, hey, that was a beautiful wedding. Invite me to the marriage. And that hit me hard, because it was, wait a second, how much did we put God into this? How much did we allow God to be part of this? Because, we're celebrating, we're doing what our society, we're jumping through all the hoops that our society and our government and whatever has required for us to be legally married and blah, blah, blah. But is God part of this? Have we invited him into the marriage? Not just this day, but as we go on. Because a lot of people, they're like, well, we want to have communion, or we want to do this, and we want to do these quote unquote religious things in the marriage ceremony, the wedding ceremony. That's great. But is he part of the marriage itself, the relationship itself? Where is his place in that? And I think that also is a key to a lasting marriage. And so we've got a lot more that we want to talk about. We got a couple more points we want to talk about, but we're going to wind this one down now so that we can pick up next time, kind of recap, and we'll talk about the rest of the ones that we want to talk to, because we believe in marriage greatly. Like we said, 64 years of marriage between mom and dad, and then my wife and I just sitting here in this microphone. So we're gonna wind this one down, and we're gonna pick up next time, and we'll finish out the rest of them in a part 2.
Thanks for listening. Check out wewerethinking.org for more episodes, or drop us a note to info@wewerethinking.org.